Hello, welcome again. I'm Bob LeVine, founder and CEO of University Consultants of America. We're here in beautiful downtown Tampa, Florida, in our world international offices of UCA. And we'd like to welcome those of you from around the world. We do have a lot of new attendees today. Welcome to those of you in Orlando, Florida. Of course, welcome to those of you in our hometown of Tampa, and welcome to those in Asia. Hello, Jakarta. Hello, China. Welcome back. Today, we'll be doing what juniors and their parents need to know about college admissions. As a preliminary matter, you will see on the bottom of your screen, and if you can't, just scroll down a little bit with your cursor, you will see the Q&A and chat functions. Use either of those to type in questions. Don't raise your hand. I can't stop in the middle. But if you use the Q&A and chat functions, we will answer your questions at the conclusion of my comments today. Also want you to know that there are other resources for those who have not yet ventured into UCA's YouTube channel. You might want to do that. Most of these are recorded, and we have things from this year and last year and prior years. There's a lot of material on there. And if I may say so myself, there's a lot of good material on those YouTube channels. So please take advantage of that. We've also written well over 100 articles that have been published. A little shout out to our monthly partner, Cosbot Periodical. We've been writing for them for 7 years, but also with all kinds of periodicals. Pretty much anything you need to know, we've probably written about it. And if not, we'll be doing it next month. To the extent that you would like some more information about our company, please don't hesitate to reach out to us at this address, universitycoa.com. There it is. I'll put it up at the end. info@universitycoa, Consultants of America.com. But let's get right into it. What do juniors and their parents need to know about college admissions? Let us start with what you are facing over the next few months. It is currently March. And in March, well, people start thinking about taking breaks from school. But we want you to think about your college admissions effort as well, so you don't get behind. Right around now, and for April, and for May, it's time to make sure you are reaching out to your teachers and your counselors at your high school. Why? In many cases, you're going to need recommendation letters. The best recommendation letters come from people who know you well. So make sure you get to know them, talk to them, ask about their lives, not just your homework. And before the end of 11th grade, ask them, would you do me the honor of writing a recommendation for me? Now, in this process, you may very well get some documents from your high school to complete. Could be the parents completing, could be the students completing, could be both of you. And these are creating what are sometimes called brag sheets. There can be a lot of questions on there. Tell me about this, tell me about that, etc. You should fill those out, but that should not be the main thing that your recommenders know about you. They should know something about you personally. From our perspective, if there's one thing you can do to really help a teacher or a counselor write a letter that is effective and powerful, it would be to let them know why you've chosen them. It's funny, nobody ever tells anybody, hey, I'd like the honor. I'm not going to tell you why. Maybe you should. Something about the teaching style, something about the attention they paid to you, something about the material. Let them know why they're important to you. And frankly, they'll remember you in a different way. So that's just a little tip. But right around now, you should be worrying about, well, 4 things total. Number 1, kids, get good grades. Number 2, do your extracurriculars, go deep. Number 3, talk to your teachers, get your recommendation letters. Number 4, get good scores on SAT or ACT. There have been some changes over the last month or so. For example, College Board no longer provides subject tests. There's a couple left for those around the world, but for the most part, the AP test scores will be replacing subject tests in the evaluations that the colleges are doing. SAT is back. It will remain, as will ACT, but so is test optional. Test optional is something that's been around for a while, and by that I mean well over a decade. It became much more popular over the last few years, and much more popular last year because of COVID and test centers being closed, but also for social justice reasons. Some people don't have the opportunity for the best schools or for test preparation. So a lot of schools are going test optional. That does not necessarily mean test blind. In fact, many schools that are test optional require that you submit a test score for those wonderful scholarships that you want. So here's our philosophy and here's our recommendation. Do your best, prepare for it, take the test, get the best possible score, then decide if it's a score you want to report to a particular college. There may be some colleges where it's beneficial for you and some that are not, but you won't know what to do unless you know what your scores are. So please don't think that you're getting a pass by skipping the SAT. There are some times when going test optional helps. In my opinion, it's probably maybe 5% of the time. Generally, impressing them really helps because the application is designed to impress them. You're trying to get their attention. You're trying to get picked. Take every opportunity you can. But anyway, do your SAT stuff, do your teacher recommendation stuff, your extracurriculars, and get good grades. For those of you in grade 11, congratulations. You basically just have a few more months to go crazy over grades. Why? Because when you apply in grade 12, you probably won't have your grades ready. To put it another way, your application comes in before the grades come out. So in grade 12, make sure you avoid 3 things. Number 1, don't fail your courses. Number 2, don't drop out of high school. You actually have to graduate before you can matriculate into a college. And number 3, please don't commit a crime. Basically, grade 12 is to avoid disaster. We hope that if you've done well, continuing to do well won't be so bad. But as we get into grade 12, please pay attention to your college stuff. The college admissions is about your future. High school at that point is kind of about your past. But anyway, right now, those 4 things. As June and July come, that's when we strongly recommend that you start on that personal statement, that main scary boogeyman essay that everybody talks about, that books are written about, and that you finish it. In our program, the goal is to finish it by the beginning of July so that you've got some time before school starts again and your head clears up. Look, when the personal statement is done well and is complete, everybody's happier. You're happier, parents are happier, and your head clears, which is when strategy for how to apply, when to apply, which schools to apply, it just becomes easier. This is the hurdle that everybody should get through. And remember, it's just one part. The personal statement is like one part of a 10-part application. And it's like, if it were a book, it'd be chapter 5 out of 10. There's more to it than that, but it's certainly important. The application's open basically the first semester of grade 12, roughly August 1 through the beginning of January. And you're going to most likely be using a form known as the Common Application. You can apply to up to 20 schools in the Common App. We don't recommend you apply to 20 schools because you get distracted, you get tired. The odds go up of rejection. See it all the time. When people apply to too many schools, they don't do a good job with any of them, and they don't get what they want. Basically, we recommend 10 plus or minus. Some schools limit the number of transcripts they'll send to 10. Most of our premier students are, by that I mean those in our premier program who are applying to more schools. Most of them are applying somewhere in the 12 to 14 range. but that's because we can show you some that are pretty easy. Remember, you can't apply to all the best schools and expect good results. There's too much work. Last year, Stanford made it a little easier. They went from 12 essays to only requiring 9. You do that with every school, it ain't pretty. Anyway, you're going to want to open up your Common App, and for some schools, they will have their own application. Talk to us about which ones will like you better if you use their application versus Common Application. And some you only have one choice. The other thing that happens is some scholarships start to open. This is a wonderful time to actually talk to your high school counselors. They have a lot of information about that. But roughly around August 1st is when the scholarships for your class open. But others will open a little later. November 1 is usually the most common early deadline. By early, I mean early action and early decision. I actually mean restrictive single choice early action or non-restrictive early action and early decision 1 and early decision 2. And some of them are November 15, and it's just kind of a mess. But please understand this, although it is a deadline, that's not the same as what you have in high school. What you have in high school are due dates. What we have in admissions are deadlines. They're not the same. On due dates, everybody turns in everything at the same time, on the same day. Yeah, deadline is the last moment you can do it, not necessarily the best moment. In fact, probably never the best moment. The last moment. You want to be ahead of those, not only because you want to look like you care, but also because the admissions people get tired. Now, there are better times and lesser times. For those of you working with UCA, please contact your client manager so we can put together a strategy for you. But also remember this, pay attention. Applying early does not give you a coupon. There is no such thing as an early card. I know they want you to believe that applying early is better, and it is for the colleges, not necessarily you. First of all, understand this. There's over 2,000 universities in America. They don't all do it the same way. So when you hear there's a rule on how it works, the rule is wrong because by definition, you can't be right for all 2,000 universities who do things differently. So for each student, some schools will give you some benefit if you apply by November 1. Others will not, and you want to be pretty careful about how you do this because here's the truth. Early can be a problem. It can make it harder for you to be admitted. But the statistics show something different. Yeah, I know. The statistics are misleading. There are different groups in early and regular, and there are several different parts of the different groups, but here's one. All recruited athletes for those schools who recruit athletes earlier have to apply early, and they've already been pre-approved. When 25% of the class at an Ivy League school has already been pre-approved because they're athletes, and the coaches have said, yay, and admissions have said, they look good. Well, they're 100% likely to get it, and that skews the numbers. But how could it be worse? You've never written college admissions essays. Do you want to give them your first, least mature essay writing or your better stuff that comes later? Because they're going to read you in about 5 to 7 minutes, period. That's your opening. You only get one shot at this. Let's make sure it's a good one. Anyway, November 1 is generally early deadlines. Regular deadlines, for the most part, happen around January 1 to January 15. Some are February 1. And after that, there are what we call rolling admissions opportunities. Other schools that are still open. Some are open all the way up to August, even for a September start. So there's a lot of changes, and certainly it changes from year to year, and it changes because of weather concerns. So anyway, that's generally how it works. Also in January and February, if you applied regular, your interviews will be coming up quickly. If you apply early, those interviews will happen generally in beginning of October. Interviews are important. For our UCA clients who are interview prep folks, start early. Do not wait until just before. Please pay attention. You're going to get sucked into the vortex of writing a bunch of essays. Guess what? Interviews can really help. Don't wait till the last minute. We'll repeat that. Don't wait till the last minute, please. All right. Other things that happen in January, a lot more scholarships will open up. Why? Because most people finish their applications and they're paying attention. Now, just FYI, scholarships are not available only when you apply. They're available all 4 years of college. So if you think you're going to miss a deadline, maybe you miss one. But are you thinking about it in year 2 or 3 or 4? Because there's money to be had and nobody's paying attention. We'll get back to scholarships in a little while. But January and February, basically interviews, looking at some scholarship opportunities, and waiting. Parents, please pay attention to this. January and February and the beginning of March, right now, are the worst, the most stressful, the most anxious. You're waiting for decisions to come from the best universities and waiting and waiting. It is brutal. Trust me, it's really brutal. It's bad. So here's what I'm recommending. Parents, high likelihood that your darling daughter or stupendous son will kind of mess up your December holiday anyway. Why don't you plan on a vacation in like February, March? Find a way to be healthy and happy and distract yourself from the stress. Trust me, you'll thank me later. It's going to be bad. The waiting period is really bad. You think the work that we do from June to January is bad? Yeah, waiting is worse. Then the decisions come. They generally come from mid-February to the end of March. This year, some top schools are waiting until like April 12th, which is late. But generally in March, the top schools give their decisions, and it's going to be strange. It's strange because we use a holistic system of evaluation for most of our private schools in the US. It is a very subjective system. I'm going to show it to you in a second. But subjective means inconsistent. Every day, you're going to get decisions that make no sense. You're not going to get schools you thought you would. You will get schools you thought you wouldn't. And that dumb kid in your class is going to get stuff that you didn't. You're like, huh? It's going to be weird. Highs and lows. Be ready for it. But if you're working with us, or even if you're not, the more work you put in, the better the results. There is no guaranteed success. But I'll tell you this, the people who do the best in the process are those who put the most work in and most intelligent work. For our UCA clients, please remember to do these 3 things. Number 1, keep an open mind. There's a lot you don't know. That's why we're doing these. That's why we do our newsletters and our bulletins and our webinars and our one-on-one stuff. Just keep an open mind. Number 2, follow directions. I can't tell you how important that is. Follow directions. It's going to make it easier. It's going to make your results much better. And it'll keep us from going insane. Probably keep you from going insane too. So follow directions. Number 3, bother us. Do bother us. It's important that you ask questions. You just get better results when you're more engaged. So do those things. The end of the calendar kind of comes in April and May. That's when you make your decision. In most cases, historically, deposits for your college have been due by May 1st. Last year, they went a little later. I suspect this year, some will go a little later as well. But basically, during the month of April, you make your choice. And April of grade 12 is actually our goal here at UCA. Our goal is that you have too many great opportunities and too many choices. Whatever shall I do? Oh, darn. Honestly, at that point, for the most part, we'll be able to give you some easy guidance on that. It usually becomes pretty apparent. It's just that you're stuck in the forest and you can't see the trees and you can't even see the forest. But there's one really great tree. We'll show you where it is. In most cases, not that hard. We want you to feel paralyzed, though. We want too many good results. That's our goal. For that moment, you're like, whatever shall I do? To recap, right now, you're still in the preseason. You're finishing up your stuff, getting things together. Starting in June starts the work. From June through January, you'll be writing a lot of essays and doing a lot of stuff. You're going to get stressed because school is going to distract you. Please keep a balance. Then you're going to be waiting, and then you're going to have the ups and downs of decisions. And right after you make your deposit, for those of you who work with the UCA, time to give us reviews because everybody's happy when you get your colleges. Just saying. All right. Now, remember, of course, that we do have the chat function and we have the Q&A function, and we can answer your questions. Don't have any questions yet. That's okay. We're going to talk now about how to find the right colleges. Now, this one is kind of controversial in the sense that you're all doing it wrong. Not your fault. You've been conditioned by your culture, and you're in the middle of the whitewater, the choppiness that is the ocean of college information. See, the information comes from the colleges and is done for their benefit, not for yours. So there's a lot of stuff that's just evil. And I mean that in the nicest possible way. And it starts with rankings. Forget them. Why? Because they're not really rankings in the sense of caliber. Now let's back up a little bit and understand that around the world, many countries have universities that are primarily built by the government, and sometimes exclusively built by the government. And in those cases, the government has limited resources, so they tend to send the best resources to school 1, the second best resources to school 2, and by the time they get to school 5 or 6, it's just not that great. That's not the way it is in the US. In fact, universities in the US began before the US began. United States of America kind of started around 1776 with those guys who fought the redcoats. Harvard started in 1636. See, our university system, our education system started before there was a government. And so we have this interesting balance between the public universities and private universities. And frankly, the private universities are the ones that are highest ranked for multiple reasons. But rankings? Well, I want to show you a couple things. We're going to start by just doing something that you have probably done once before, at least if you are not behind the Great Firewall of China. Sorry, some of you are behind the Great Firewall of China. We are going to use that bastion of all right and good, the internet. Let me go pull it up real quick. Oh, there it is. Remember that? It's called the internet. These are some things I go to too often. Call it Google, whatever you wish. I'm going to type in US News Rankings. Okay, you see I do this a lot. Why US News? They seem to be the king of rankings here in the US. There are a lot more. There's like 20 rankings, but we'll just use US News. Now, US News has multiple rankings. They have a global one for all the schools in all the world. They have a national one for the larger and mid-sized schools in the United States. Compare and contrast. They have a small liberal arts one. They rank different majors. They got lots of them. We're just going to talk about the University of Washington. Now, University of Washington qualifies in both US News National and Global because it's just a big school. So if we take a look at where University of Washington ranks among all the schools in the United States, you'll see that US News ranks them number 58. I happen to think that UW is better than that, and this is the University of Washington, Seattle, for those who don't know. But US News says, okay, they're number 58 in the US. But what about global? This is the international ranking of all the schools and all the gin joints and all the towns in all the world. If you take a look at this one, you'll notice that UW is number 8 in the world. Huh? Number 58 in the US and number 8 in the world? How is that possible? How is it possible that one school is 50 points better on an international standing because they're different? You see, rankings use what are known as algorithms. These are mathematical formulas, like algebra. and they're not the same. Each ranking uses a different formula. In fact, from year to year, they change the formulas kind of in conjunction with what the universities want, at least the university at the top of the list. So why does UW do so well in the global one? Because they direct their attention and their data to the global rankings. Yeah, this is a business. Do schools manipulate data? You will find that US News also has another list, the unranked list, where they take people off. In fact, this happened about 2 years ago, a year and a half, I'm not sure exactly, to a very well-ranked school known as the University of California at Berkeley. You see, at the time, US News decided to come out with an entirely new ranking algorithm, and Berkeley wanted to adjust their numbers to hit the new algorithm. But they knew their numbers they already submitted were for the other algorithm, and they were going to get caught, which means they get in trouble. So what did they do? They confessed. Our mistake. We have done something. Oh my gosh. We used the wrong data. It was off. We have to submit new data, but please excuse us. And US News says, no, we're not going to excuse you. We're going to put you on the unranked list. You're off the list for about 3 weeks. Why? Because University of California reported their error like 3 weeks before the new rankings came out when nobody was paying attention. It's a game. Rankings are a bit of a game. Please don't get caught up in it. Here's the truth. I'm a Harvard guy. Bill's a Princeton guy. Hermé's a Yale guy. We have people at Stanford. We have people at all the top schools, MIT. There are easily 100 schools just as good as those for the right person in the right situation. And the top 5 to 10 schools are not good for everybody. They're literally unhealthy for some people. That does not make you inferior. It just means you need to be in the right place to do the best possible job. So if we're not looking at rankings, what do we look at? Well, we want you to look at fit, how you quite literally fit within this place you're going to be for almost 4 years. And in looking at fit, there are 3 main factors. Now there's smaller pieces of these. We can break them into subparts. But in simple terms, the structure of the curriculum, not the caliber, the structure. We'll come back to that. Number 2, the culture on campus. And number 3, the opportunities off campus. We're going to go backwards. We'll start with the opportunities off campus, because this is one that can be pretty obvious if you pay attention to it, and pretty not obvious and you're stuck in the wrong place. Okay. There are 2 ways that you can be, well, developed off campus. One would be by inspiration, and the other would be by things that are relevant to your education. What's inspiration? Putting in a good mood. If you like cities, maybe not go out into the middle of the country or a college town. If you like hiking, maybe not Manhattan. If you like country music, Nashville. If you like college radio, Boston. If you like theater, New York, Chicago, Houston. If you like the water, go towards the water. If you like warm weather, if you like cool weather, look, you're not going to be studying or in class all the time. Not even close. You're going to be away from it a lot more. What is available to you to re-inspire you and recharge you and make you in a better mood and just make you happy is really important. So look at it for inspiration, but also look at it for education. Notice this is education. This is not all about classes. College is not all about classes. Education happens everywhere. I learn all the time. I don't go to an institution. Kind of wish I could. We all want to go back because of all the cool stuff that's on campus. But let's again talk about what's available off campus. If you are a STEM person, you love science, then you love the stuff in laboratories. And frankly, a research university is going to have some really cool toys for you. on campus. But let us say you are somebody who is more into the social sciences, business, government, whatever. Well, there are no great business internships on a college campus. Maybe you can work at Starbucks or something like that, but you're not getting a finance job on a campus. So you're going to have to look off campus for those kinds of opportunities, for experiential learning as well as building a resume, if you will. In small towns, there's not as much opportunity to interact with business as there is in, say, I don't know, Los Angeles or New York or Boston or Chicago or any of our great cities. And if you really want to know about, I don't know, international and politics, you might want to look at Washington, D.C. But if you're a science person, look at what's available on campus. If you're a social science person, remember, just because it's the flagship university of your state doesn't mean there's anything special for you in Gainesville, Florida. Just saying. But pay attention to what's off campus. Also understand the culture on campus. I'm talking culture. Large universities tend to use Greek institutions, what we call fraternities and sororities, as a social structure. Not everybody does. Greek life can be great, and Greek life can also be something that's not for you. At my alma mater, they now have a few sororities, but basically we had zero Greek because they refocused everybody to the on-campus extracurriculars. There were a lot of them. Some schools have different attitudes. Some schools are designed in a way that connects people, while others are designed in a way that doesn't. A school where you go to, we live on campus for 1 year and then get an apartment is going to be a very different world than if you live on campus all 4 years in residential houses or colleges or whatever they call them. So there's a culture on campus, and get to know that to make sure it's something that makes sense for you. But perhaps the most important one, and the one everybody neglects to research deeply, is the structure of the curriculum. Again, I am not talking about the caliber of curriculum. We're not talking about this is better at business. These are better at biology. This school is best at comp sci. I'm not talking about that. Why? Because there's only 3 results for your college experience. The first one we don't really want to talk about. You fail or quit. Get rid of that one. Next, you bust through the ceiling. You change the state of the art. You create the new paradigm. You're the it boy or it girl that makes the world different at a young age. In that case, the university is basically a launching pad for you, and as long as it kind of works for you, you're good. But there are very few of us who fit that category. Most of us, yeah. We will never use all of the amazing resources on a university campus. The labs, the libraries, the museums, the professors, the clubs, the activities. There are way too many to exhaust them. So, boom. What are you going to do with them? And it starts with understanding how they're presented. Let's understand curriculum. The cool part about America, our colleges don't agree on how to do this. They do not all give you the same pre-boxed education. Around the world, many places do, where everybody takes the same courses. Not here. Here, you can design your own majors. Quite literally, you can create a major that fits you. Here, you get to pick your classes. In fact, college by its nature is an elective. You decide whether to go. You'll decide where to go. You'll decide on your major. You'll decide on your electives. You decide on everything. So let's try to make as intelligent a decision as your parents did in picking high school for you. In fact, let's go a little deeper than that. We'll start with just a few things, and our students know that we have some research assignments and some explanations of how to do this even deeper, but let's start with the calendar. A lot of schools are on what we call semesters. 2 groups of classes per year, fall semester, spring semester. You heard of that one. They also have quarters. That's a little different than what you know in high school. In high school, quarters are 2 semesters split into 2, 4 things. Not in college. In college, it's the calendar year split into 4, the entire year. So summer is a quarter that you come in or don't. In some places, like in Dartmouth, you must go through 1 summer quarter. But if you are just doing quarters during the normal school year, that is 3 sets of classes instead of the 2 that you get in semesters. So they tend to move a little faster. But there are other structures like the 4-1-4, which is 2 semesters in the middle, usually January. They call it a J term. You just do one thing, often on campus, not necessarily. You go deep. Then there's stuff called the block plan, which I think is brilliant. Doesn't fit everyone, but imagine you go to class for 4 to 6 weeks, take the final exam, take a break for 5 days, and start over, 1 class at a time. You're going to have very different lives in terms of how you do what you do, how you focus on what you focus, particularly if you're in a block plan, which is one thing and people don't disperse. But it's also the number of classes. For example, I took 32 classes at Harvard, 4 per semester, 8 per year, 4 years, 4 times 8 is 32. Bill took 30 at Princeton. Princeton focuses more on a thesis, which is required. I didn't have to do one. At Northwestern, people can take up to 48 classes. That's a lot more. Now, if you like eating from the world's greatest buffet line and tasting everything, that's awesome. If the idea of 48 final exams makes you anxious, maybe not so awesome, but they're really different, as are the curricular structures. Even within a major, one is not like another. Trust me, they're just not alike. What the University of California does is not the same as what the University of Florida does. Just isn't. So look at your major and find out what courses you're actually going to require to take and what the elective possibilities are, how many are required. But also understand that at most of our schools, you are not required to select your major right away. Usually you have to the end of the second year. Sometimes it's the first year, and some they want to funnel you right away, but they're all different. Even on one school's campus, they're different. For example, University of Pennsylvania has a thing called Wharton. Been hearing a lot of that. Okay, that's a very good business school. They also have a nursing school and a school known as the Arts and Sciences, meaning they got schools within a school. And they have these cool programs like Jerome Fisher where they cross over. Cornell does things like that. Georgetown does things like that. Harvard doesn't. Yale doesn't. So the curriculum within the schools can change, but to the extent you do not select a major for 2 years, what do you do before the 2 years? How does that work? Well, you're going to take some classes in the direction of your major because you like that stuff. But what does a school require? Generally, there are 3 options. In the middle is the most common one and historically the most populated one, and that's called general education. Think about the old natural science, social science, humanities trilogy, and you take a few courses in each. Back around when I started college, back dark ages, long time ago, there was this new thing called the core curriculum. The idea is at age 18, you don't know enough about the world to make a selection on your own, so we want to help because we don't trust you. So they have a lot of different areas, and you take a few classes in each area. Some schools go up to 15 different areas where you must take 1 or 2 classes. You have a lot of choices of those classes, sometimes up to 30. And don't think that I don't want to take theology, because there's some pretty cool theology and film courses, for example, at Boston College. But a core curriculum has more requirements on top of your major than a general education. But at the other extreme is an open curriculum. The school that is most famously known for that is Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. In an open curriculum outside of the major, you can take anything you want. No guidance, no requirements, except maybe a writing course. So the curriculum is very different. And it's important that you drill into what that is, what that means, and understand how you learn best. Do you learn best through your eyes by reading, ears by listening in a lecture? Do you learn best by brainstorming around the Harkness table. In an interactive environment, do you learn best by doing, what we call kinesthetic, which is an experiential learning. Some schools give course credit for internships. In the state of Florida, there are 2 of the public universities, UCF and USF. There's a limited version in Florida State, but you can't get class credit at any other public universities, not for interning. Then there are schools that have what are known as co-op. This is cool if you like it. Co-op means for an entire semester, you don't go to class. You just do your internship. And the school helps you with that. So what happens? Well, you're learning by doing, which is very different than learning by absorbing. You are not going to class, so you are not paying tuition. On the other hand, you are building a resume and gaining transferable skills that the kid in a lecture isn't getting. You are meeting people who might just hire you, and the company or institution that hosts you for the co-op, they pay you. Yep, you get paid. So you don't pay for your tuition and you do get paid. It's an option. It's a whole different thing. It should be part of your evaluation. And dive deep. Go into the admissions website and look at the academics tab and understand. And in fact, they usually have names for their special curricula. And you might very well have to write an essay why I want to go to this university and why do I want to study this major at the university. And here's the deal. You better understand the curriculum of the university. The people reading you definitely do. They go there every day. You just can't look at a ranking and decide, ooh, this is good in comp sci. Now I know that, let's say Carnegie Mellon is pretty darn good at robots, but how does it work? Is it different than Caltech? Is it different than MIT? They're all different. Is it different than the Olin College of Engineering on the campus of Babson? Yeah, this is a 300-person STEM school. Your ability to get your fingers dirty at a school like that's a little different than in one of the UC schools, because in the University of California system, Intro to Computer Science is now limited to 2,000 students. Your chance to get in and deep and talk to the professors, not the same. But anyway, when it comes to researching schools, look for the fit between you and the school. Understand the curriculum, understand the campus culture, understand off-campus opportunities. We're now going to turn to the evaluation process. How do the schools do what they do? Well, I'm going to oversimplify. There are 2 basic methods. One method you know well, one method you may just start to be learning or have no clue. We'll talk about the one you know well, what I call the numbers method. Some call it the threshold method, but basically this is focusing on your grades and perhaps test scores more than anything. This is done around the world. It's done in the US. In the US, it is primarily done at the major public universities, the big ones, because A, they're public and they better use objective formulae or else they get sued. And B, they're huge. They don't have the chance to look at you very individually. They almost run you through a computer. And look at it this way. Every year, UCLA has something like 125,000 applicants, and there are 4 essays on each application, so they would have to read 500,000 essays. Do you think that UCLA reads 500,000 essays, 500,000 essays, and objectively differentiates between who is slightly better on an essay? I don't think so. They say they do. I don't think so. I think they use some of those factors for the people right on the line. But basically in a numbers program, get good grades, high test scores. In fact, many of these schools don't even require recommendation letters. They don't want them. They don't have interviews, and they don't have many essays. They have to keep it simple. That's an easy one. The one that people don't quite understand is the holistic system. The holistic system is employed primarily by our private schools. Why? Because they're private and they can pretty much do whatever they want as long as they don't violate discrimination laws. So they're looking for something different and they design their programs differently. But the one thing they keep in mind and they all agree upon is to create the best possible education. You use all your assets. And the largest asset in quantity and quality is you, the student. There are more of you than there are professors, and you're going to talk to each other more than you talk to a professor. So utilizing the asset of the human being known as the student is quite important to them. So they're looking beyond your qualifications. The qualifications are a starting point. Are you good enough to learn? And you don't have to be the highest qualified. They're looking beyond that to contribution. This is a campus community. You may know some kids in your high school class who are pretty smart and don't talk to each other. Do they add to a campus community? You may also know some kids in your class who are pretty smart and are kind of jerks. Would you want them on your campus? They don't want a cancer on campus. They want a contributor and even a catalyst. So at these schools, they're looking for what you bring to them, not just what they give to you or sell to you. So they're looking for your contribution. This happens outside the classroom. Generally doesn't happen inside the classroom. There's a few people, but that's usually in a laboratory. Outside the classroom happens in two ways. Number one, what you do outside the classroom. Are you an athlete? Are you a cellist? Are you a thespian? Whatever. Do you do stuff other people benefit? Number two is how you do what you do. This is human interaction. It is personality. It is interactivity. It is mood. It is all kinds of things. But they're looking for a person. The holistic system looks way beyond your qualifications. Don't believe me? I'm going to show it to you right now. So for years and years and years, if you will, longer than most of you have been alive, I volunteered for Harvard and ran the Harvard admissions stuff in this part of the world and got very familiar with the Harvard method of evaluating students. Ladies and gentlemen, here it is. This is the Harvard interview report. And it is the Harvard grading scale, if you will. Now, this scale is very familiar to me, but it's also almost the same as the scales that other schools like this use. Duke is a little weird, but basically there are three areas they evaluate: your academics, your non-intellectual, non-academic, extracurricular stuff, and who you are as a person. So essentially here it is. You see number one, academic, and for the most part, it's not hard. It's mostly objective. You see that this one lists scores. There's a little bit of subjective stuff, but then the second thing is they give you a number. And in case of Harvard, it used to be 1 to 6, and now it's a little different. But Stanford's 1 to 9, I believe, and I think Yale and Chicago and Georgetown are 9 to 1, and Duke is 1 to 5. Doesn't matter, just a number. But they're going to give you a number in your academic potential, and they're going to give you a number in your non-academic stuff. Harvard has 5 words because they can't use the word activity. It's anything that goes beyond the brain-based academic intellectual stuff, and personal qualities, who you are as a human being. This is like way more important to our private schools. In fact, I want to pull up an article that I've been writing. Actually, I wrote it. It's being published now. And what I did for this article was interview about a dozen admissions representatives, including Sophia, who used to be my Harvard admissions representative back in the day. And essentially, I asked them this: how does it work in this holistic system? What is the moment where you go, I want that person? Well, it didn't surprise me, but it might surprise you. This is what Sophia had to say. If I were to assign percentages to the impact of academics versus the other choices, especially for those schools who have the luxury of choosing whom they want, academics is at best 10% of the consideration. Check the academic box, then move on. What's the way to that other 90%? Your grades and your test scores are just the beginning. They're just a threshold. Higher does not necessarily mean better. They could get the class filled twice over with perfect test scores. Seriously. Harvard gives out about 2,000 offers every year, and every year they have about 3,500 perfect SATs. and 8,000 perfect GPAs. So if you got a 1590 out of 1600 and you think it's all about the numbers, you're dead. But the truth is, it's not how they do it. That's just the starting point. So essentially what you do in your application is two things. Number one, stay in the game with the stuff in your academic resume, meaning just keep above the line. Avoid a problem and avoid what I call the head scratch. Why'd you do that? I don't get it. Because if they lose momentum in a read that is entirely 5 minutes and maybe 7, a little longer if they're writing a blurb and they love you. If you lose momentum on that stuff, you're done. It's a competitive environment. Don't screw up on the first part. And that includes even up through the resume. That's actually just a drop-down list. You don't usually write a real resume of your extracurriculars. In that is kind of a transition, but the real embrace of the applicant happens after that. Because of the subjective nature, as they read your essays, there is an embrace that happens that is sometimes known as reader love, where they just fall in love with you. See, that's how it works. This is a lot more like dating than you can ever imagine. This is not about writing a Pulitzer Prize winning essay. It is about getting selected. This is sales, and the buyer decides who gets in, and you're not the buyer, you're the seller. In the holistic method, the results are inconsistent because the readers are all different. So for the most part, don't worry about what an individual reader is going to do, because frankly, we don't know who they are. Yeah, there's somebody who's primarily responsible for your area. Guess what? They haven't been assigned to your area yet. And there will be a second reader, and even up to 40 people will look at your application. They do not all agree. So don't worry about them so much. Worry about you. Stick to yourself. In the holistic method of evaluation, the results are inconsistent because of the subjectivity of the process. And quite honestly, the most important part is your personality. It shows. It shows in your essays. It shows in your interviews. It shows in your recommendation letters. When teachers like you, they gush. If the letter's kind of flat, so are your results. So the holistic method requires some art and science. Here at UCA, we use strategies based upon human memory and brain science and good stuff like that, psychology, to get the ideas into their head and get them to like you and get them to fight for you. And this is why people complain, but I had perfect scores and I didn't get in. There are reasons. It's a different process. If you cannot see the target, you're not going to hit the target, at least not very likely. And that's why today we wanted you to quite literally see the grading sheet. It's a little different. Those of you who are working with us will get to know it inside and out, and it will become natural to you. But if you want to know more, please don't hesitate to contact us. We'd have one more thing that we want to go over before we get to your questions. Again, use the chat, use the Q&A function. We'll talk about money now. Before we get to the word scholarship, let's get to what's really going on, a cost-benefit analysis. If the university education is free and you don't get enough out of it, it is worthless. And you have wasted not only time of 4 years, but on the way out, you're not going to make as much money. You're going to be lost, like a puppy sliding on a polished floor, boom, right into the cabinets. A lot of us are that way. At UCA, we call it getting traction. You use college to get your feet under you. You can run faster and jump higher when you have traction than when you don't. And if you don't get a good, make that exemplary education, you're not going to get started right. You're not going to progress the way you want to. You may change careers. You're not going to make as much money. Your relationships will be destroyed because you'll be in a bad mood. Trust me, it's a mess, even if school is free. In fact, I think it's a lost opportunity. This is the best collection of assets you will ever see. And the moment you get your graduation diploma, that ID card that you have doesn't work anymore. So you have this window of opportunity. Use it wisely. So there is a benefit side to the cost benefit analysis. And even if the cost is $1 million, if you make $5 million a year out of college, that's a good investment. Just saying. But we do want to talk about this term scholarships because it's overused and it's confusing. So let's wipe the board. We will explain what a true scholarship is. But let us start by understanding the actual cost, because there's how much you pay and whether you can get outside sources. Okay, there are two parts to the cost equation after we figure out the sticker price of tuition. They are both called aid, financial aid, and merit aid. Financial aid is based upon how much money parents make. Merit aid is based upon how much they want the student. Sometimes it's for academic reasons, sometimes it's for athletic reasons, or you're the best cellist in the world. Sometimes it's because of where you live or other factors. Merit aid can be all kinds of things. Financial aid tends to be a formula, and you can find this formula pretty easily. The US government requires that every college website have what is called a net price calculator. So parents, go ahead and take a look at it. You'll have a rough idea of whether they will give you money or not. Financial aid, schools with more money give more money. Schools without much money don't give as much. Okay, now let's talk about merit aid. Merit aid, again, is based upon the student. This is just like financial aid, frankly. It's not really a scholarship. It's a discount. It's a discount because they want you at their school. Here's the deal. This is the tuition price. But what's it going to take to get you into this car today? It's a lot like buying a car. Sticker price, real price. What they will do is raise the sticker price, particularly at private schools, so that, well, if it's as expensive as Harvard, it must be good. They raise it, then they give you a scholarship. It's not really a scholarship. They're just charging you less money. It's their money. And they do this because it gets you in a really good mood. Totally makes you happy. It's a trick to try to get you there. So merit aid is available to everyone around the world, even internationally. And financial aid is available to those who need it. And at some schools, even international students can get full financial aid at some schools. Not many, but a few. It is all there. But the starting point in a good economic result, a cost discount, is picking the right schools, because they don't all give you money and you're not the best of the best of the best of the best for all of them. And we never know exactly what it's going to be, but over the years, we've had over 1,000 students. We work with a lot of students. We can tell you which schools are more likely and less likely to give you a discount on their tuition. That's why we're here. Contact your client manager, contact UCA, and we can give you some guidance on how to balance that. In fact, one of our strategies in that early versus regular thing is to apply early to a school with rolling admissions. That's not that hard for you to get, but is a great school for you. We call them solid schools, not safeties or backup. These are solid schools that will really work for you, because if you get accepted in September with a scholarship of $100,000, you're going to be in a good mood. And that means you're going to be less stressed, as will the parents. And if you're less stressed and in a better mood, you're going to write better stuff, which means if you start with the schools at the bottom of your list and get these results, you're going to get better results for the schools at the top of your list. Not only get more practice, but the stress is gone. It's a strategy. Anyway, that's on the cost side, getting the discounts. But on the supplemental side, there are other ways to do it. We talked about co-op before, which is kind of like having a job. You could do loans, but there are two others. Scholarships, and by this I mean true scholarships from outside entities, not from the university necessarily, and grants, which come from a government. Now, there are some scholarships on campus. These tend to be at the larger schools where a rich alum decided to give a lot of money, but put his or her name on the scholarship. So it's, in those cases, yeah, when you get there, walk into the financial aid office and sit down and put your headphones on and just start filling stuff out. You're going to get money. And there's a strategy on how to get outside scholarships. We will go over that more for our clients when we get closer to August. But essentially, number one, look for the larger dollar scholarships if you're looking at national ones, because everybody's looking at them. You might as well put your effort in something that actually gives you money. Number two, look at local scholarships. It could be a Rotary Club, it could be a corporation, it could be a charity, it could be a group that has these scholarships. They're small, but it's amazing how many people don't apply to them. Every year they'll have 3 of them. Maybe it's only $1,500 or $1,000 or $500, but nobody ever gets the $500 because only 2 people apply. So start to look at the small ones because you're going to get tired. And finally, look at the specialty ones that might be specific to your national area, or even better, specific to your major. A lot of the Detroit automakers have scholarships for people who want to do automobile design. So take a look at your major and your location and the big ones. But again, we'll give you some more guidance then. Essentially, though, the money side works like this. Pick schools that are likely to give you the best overall out-of-pocket cost. And this is mostly tuition, by the way, because if you live in an apartment, that's on you. That's your price. What you eat, that's on you. And recognize that there are different ways that they price them. State schools tend to tell you only about tuition. Private schools are the whole thing because you live there all 4 years. So when you're thinking only about tuition when looking at their price, let's remember you got to eat. Let's remember you got to live somewhere. You got to buy books, even digital ones. If you need a car, you probably have a car payment. Got to buy gas. Got to buy insurance. Got to get a parking permit. Got to pay parking tickets. And you're probably going to have a fender bender with some out of pocket for the, either because you caused it or because your insurance didn't cover enough. There are outside costs. Trust me, it's very, very difficult to get out of any wonderful tuition-free situation for less than like $20,000, which is kind of how it works. But it starts with making that list of schools. And remember, it's not just during 12th grade. It's all 4 years of college. Keep at it. We have plenty of people who keep going after this money and get through college for free. Oh, one other thing. Don't assume that a public university is cheaper than a private university. If you happen to live in the state of Florida and you're going to a Florida university, sure, the in-state tuition is going to be a little different. In fact, there's a new law that's being considered in our great state of Florida that if the grandparents live here, then you qualify for in-state even if you're not from Florida. That may be good or bad for you. But if you're from Florida and you're going to school in California or Georgia or Ohio State, you don't get the in-state price. It's as expensive as a private school. So don't kid yourself. The difference between Stanford and Berkeley, there's like no difference. They're both really, really expensive because this is a business for them. They have to make money. So yeah, an in-school public education, an in-state public education might be great for you, but it might not. And in fact, most of our students who have full rides, who don't pay anything, it's from the private schools, because the private schools can keep their money. Go ahead and look it up. Go ahead and look up your favorite school's endowments. This is the bank accounts, the money they keep. Trust me, state universities do not have nearly the size of endowments as the private ones. Not even close, probably not even within 20x. Why? Because the taxpayers don't want them to keep the money. So they don't have it. And because they have so many students, the endowment per student is pretty low. Whereas the endowment per student at a private school like the University of Richmond, which is private, is like over $500,000 of endowment per student. And so at Richmond, they have what is known as a Richmond guarantee, where every student gets about $5,000 to fund your own project. Point being, there's money everywhere. You have to look for it a little bit. We'll give you guidance, but essentially, ones you know today: financial aid, merit aid, scholarships, grants, and understand the cost-benefit analysis. Again, we're about to go into questions. Use the Q&A function now or the chat function now. We will answer some questions, and at the end, we'll put up our email address so you can answer more offline if you wish. So let's get to a few questions. First question, what is more important, employment opportunities around the school or the actual location of the school? Well, kind of depends. There is no rule of thumb on this one. You're not there to build a resume. You're there to build yourself. So remember, it's inspiration as well as education. It's a combination of things. The person who asked this question happens to be a UCA student, and we have a process known as guided self-analysis. And in this process, you're starting to learn some of this. We're training you how to figure this out. So be patient. It's an individualized thing, but we don't want you in a place where you're miserable. Look, MIT is one of my favorite schools in the world, one of my 10 favorite schools anywhere. But take a look at their rates of depression. Bad things happen when you're depressed. So even though I love Boston and I love MIT, I don't love it for everyone. Next question. What about college towns over cities? What if you prefer college towns over cities but plan on taking a social science major? Well, you should think that through in advance. Now remember, the college application process is simply to collect options. You're going to make a decision later in April when you are more sophisticated about you and more sophisticated about the schools. But in discussing fit, let us understand that your college experience is not a single experience. It is essentially three. So the evaluation should be understood for at least two of the three periods of your college experience. We'll start with the last one. During the last semester, you're leaving. You're going to grad school or you're going to get a real job. It's a bit melancholy, but trust me, the last semester is not the same as the first ones. In fact, the first 7, and we're using a semester system, but the first 7 semesters are not the same either. Generally, the first year to year and a half, you are lost. You don't know anybody. You got to find where the food is. You're just getting your feet under you. Takes about a year to a year and a half. Trust me on that. This is kind of the onboarding year, the initiation year. Some people need a certain environment for that, and it's more important to them. Or maybe what's more important is the year between the beginning and the end, 2 years, what I call the growth years. This is when you've gotten your feet wet. You understand what you're doing. You probably have picked your major, and you're going to start venturing further. The question is, where are you venturing? Maybe it's not further geographically, or maybe it is. Knowing, for example, that there's a subway system that you like. I like the Boston system for the just 4 colors. I can do that. The New York system confuses me every time. Maybe it's just me. But there's these years of growth. So instead of worrying, how does it work across the board, let's understand that there's an onboarding year to year and a half, which different environments can be very different. Here in Central Florida, the University of Central Florida has an amazing structure, campus structure for the first couple of years. University of South Florida, it's not designed the same way. Maybe USF has a better middle ground. Maybe UCF has a better beginning ground, to be determined. But there are a lot of factors in that, and that's kind of where we help you on that. Next question. Generally, and this is an SAT question, what do you need to get on the SAT for a less than 10% acceptance rate college? In other words, you know, the best of the best of the best that are hardest to get into that everyone covets. Okay. For every rule, there's an exception, but here's the rule. Look, if your SAT is above 1,500, and both subjects will be above 700, and your AP scores or subject tests are also kind of in that range, you're fine. You don't need to worry about 1,590 versus 1,600. That's the rule. The exception is that in the tech schools like an MIT or even in a public university, it's going to be more focused upon test scores and grades because it's objective, it's the numbers basis. They're going to want to see something a little higher. Clearly get the best that you want. Most of our kids that get Stanford didn't get 1,500 out of 1,600 on an SAT. They're kind of in the 1,480 range. A couple got over, but it's not higher is better at the private schools. But our rule of thumb is for any school, if you're above 1,500, they're not rejecting you because of that. Now, there are some gradations when you go a little bit lower for other schools. When we get into what we would consider to be kind of the fit schools in the middle of your list, we do focus a bit on SAT, but we focus on what we call the middle 50%. That's actually 75% of the group. That's kind of the way the bell curve works. The middle 50% says between this and this, please don't use the numbers from last year because while the test optional, they're just all over the place. We have all the numbers historically, and we try to fit you in there. But again, it's going to be way different for a private school and a public school. It's just not consistent. Example is a couple of years ago, Patrick, a very nice, fine young man from Jakarta, Indonesia. Patrick got a 1480 SAT, president of his class captain, if you will, of his school, high school tennis player, but not an intercollegiate tennis player. Did some cool stuff, had this amazing project about growing spirulina as a superfood in the islands that don't have the right terrain, and also was a line cook. So interesting guy. He applied. First decision was UC Davis, was accepted with a scholarship, and for some reason 2 days later they raised the scholarship. I guess they really liked him. And then he heard from UCLA and was rejected by UCLA. Mom was not pleased. Mom's older child, a daughter, made it into Rice University without any help from consultants. What was that? Ellie, trust me. In a week, he'll be saying, screw you, UCLA, my son's going to a better school. And indeed, in a week, he heard from Northwestern University. Northwestern said yes. UCLA said no. Ranked number 20 or 21. Northwestern, ranked higher, said yes. And everybody was happy because that was his first choice school. And it's basically, screw you guys, we got Northwestern. And then the next couple of days, he gets UC Berkeley. UCLA said no, but Berkeley said yes. Doesn't matter, I'm going to Northwestern. But he didn't. Ended up at Stanford. UCLA rejected. USC rejected. Apparently, LA didn't like the student. But Stanford said yes, and now he's at Stanford. So there's a lot to this, and it's subjective, and just doesn't kind of work in a linear fashion. Next question. Please advise how to go deep in extracurriculars, especially for students who are at home. In other words, school closed, what am I going to do? Guys, the same thing you should have been doing all along. This is actually an opportunity. You see, there are cultures. It could be a culture of a nation or an ethnicity or a school. And being part of the group is a great thing, but you have to differentiate yourself from the group too. You have to be somebody they want. If you do the same thing as everybody else, why do they need you? At a local IB school here, everybody does Relay for Life, which is a cancer funding event. Well, if everybody does the same thing, everybody looks alike. Now, this is true throughout high school. They've kind of seen everything that high school does. But you should do something beyond what everybody does and do something that's unique and personal and different. It's not done by eating what high school feeds you. But what do you do when you just can't get into the community? Well, you might want to write this down. The adults have heard of it and use it. The kids have heard of it and abuse it, but it's important. I'll go slowly. It's called the internet. We're using it now. You can reach out to anybody through Zoom or Skype or what have you. You can get to people. So you're not stuck. Instead of worrying about what you can't do, think about what you can do, and we're here to help. This is where we work with our students on a very individual basis and look at what you've already started to do, already enjoy, instead of looking out into the abyss. The things that you can't quite understand and you can't see because you've never done it before, look backwards. Stuff you already like, we'll show you ways to do them deeper and broader. That's kind of the thing. But having a quarantine is no excuse. Nope. Stop worrying about failure. Start worrying, how to succeed. Question. Is there a specific website that is good for discovering schools? No, but there are some websites that are very valuable for researching schools, and that's different. We tend to use a website called collegedata.com, and it's got some pretty cool stuff. Yes, it has average characteristics of the classes that get in. It has percentage of boys versus girls and which are the most popular majors. It also talks about the culture on campus. It talks about how many people are in which kind of thing, like fraternities or sororities, all kinds of stuff. That's a good place to start to look around. Here at UCA, we do our own research, and during the slow season, from January to May, we're re-researching all the schools, and we have something like, 100 of our research papers that we'd be glad to share with you. They're not pretty, but that's what our team and our client managers are for, to show you some things that you're not likely to see. It's kind of like, are you going to be able to go from 0 to 200 miles an hour the first time out? No, it's our job to be able to drive fast, or at least to guide you in some directions. So collegedata.com tends to work pretty well. There are lots of them out there. Please avoid looking at the what I call Yelp reviews, the College Raptors, the College Confidentials, where people just comment until later. Later on, that stuff becomes more valuable because you have a better context for where all the stuff fits. Anyway, that's why we're here. And speaking of us, I want to put up on the screen our email information. Hold on. If you do have further questions, do not hesitate to contact us at info@universitycoa.com. If you would like to know more about how to research schools and you're part of the UCA team, well, if you're part of our family, you probably already read our newsletter that talks about it. There'll be a bulletin coming out later in the month. And we just did a webinar on February 27th talking exactly about this. So if you missed all of that, please contact your client manager. We have a lot of materials that you probably should already have seen, and we're getting you in the process of that. And even in the GSA, we will have some assignments. So, okay, that's our program for today. I appreciate everybody being around. Again, my name is Bob LeVine, founder and CEO of University Consultants of America. I hope you have a great evening or a great day today. Hope to see you in person as soon as we can. But for now, I bid you peace. Please have a wonderful day or night. Let's do this. Thanks a lot. See you guys soon. Bye-bye.